Hello and welcome to In Case You Missed It. Today's November 14th. We're going to talk about what has happened. First of all, big round of applause for our government in Washington finally, after 43 days of a shutdown, doing their freaking job and getting the government back reopened. Subsidies have not been addressed at all. 8 Democrats broke with the Democrat Party, very upsetting for those on the left. Got the government reopened. Now we're going to get furloughed workers and government workers, all their back pay, SNAP benefits are being reinstated. Still a lot of things happening and delays in the FAA and flight travel, right? Still some things unwinding from the shutdown, but at least we're back in business. But here's the thing, this is only to January 30th for most of the important things. So it did fund a number of programs and priorities to the federal government all the way through September 30th of 2026. But this stopgap funding measure only funds the government until January 30th. So we are going to be, after the Thanksgiving break, hot and heavy back into this debate about the ACA subsidies, which were not extended. So everybody in the marketplace is going to see higher costs. Not everybody, many people will see higher costs. Employers, look for your employees that were in the individual marketplace to be coming back to your employer-sponsored plan. Speaking of the stopgap measure that was funded, a very interesting thing politicians love to do in emergency times like this is slide new rules and new things into already going to be approved legislation. Don't get it twisted. What they just did was new legislation to reopen the government, and inside this new piece of legislation to reopen the government, there was a provision that was waived. The original provision in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act said that they were going to be cutting over $500 billion a year from Medicare reimbursement. In the stopgap funding measure that was just passed that reopened the government, they slid in a little provision saying they don't have to do that. The One Big Beautiful Bill said they were cutting $3.4 trillion or adding $3.4 trillion of new spending, and they needed to offset it. One of the ways they were going to do that was the $500 billion in cuts to Medicare. So the $3.4 trillion is still on, the $500 billion a year in cuts is off. So that's good for Medicare, that's good for Medicare providers, but a $3.4 trillion bill just got more expensive. Regulation is catching up with AI in healthcare. This is a good thing. A recent meeting of the Digital Health Advisory Committee met to discuss generative AI-enabled digital mental health medical devices. Say that 5 times fast. The FDA is expressly addressing these AI-enabled devices in the mental health field. This is where they're going to focus initial energy on putting regulations around which tools are regulated versus which tool falls under general wellness type thing. So there are going to be an ongoing monitoring of these AI devices and developments with an aim to get them on the reimbursement schedule so they are publicly available through your insurance plan. But the big concern of the committee is, when do we have human intervention? The human oversight component, especially in the mental health field with AI devices, is going to be the key component. When someone using one of these devices has suicidal ideations, they have thoughts on hurting themselves or others, when does a human step in and take that over from the AI device, and how they regulate that so they never fail with it? U.S. pharmaceutical spending hit $806 billion in 2024. And to that, the big pharmaceutical industry said, well, that's nothing. Hold my beer. Watch this. They're going up another 9 to 11% in 2025. This is being pushed a lot by drugs for diabetes, for chronic health conditions, for endocrine system issues, cancer drugs. A lot of that stuff is happening. So we're going to see spending on pharmaceutical drugs increase. Speaking of RX, there is the new program, Trump RX. This program is working with manufacturers of drugs. The big boys, Eli Lilly, AstraZeneca, announced that they would be working alongside Trump RX or be involved in this program, and immediately saw a 6.8% rise in their stock price for Eli Lilly and a 10% rise for AstraZeneca. This program is a direct-to-consumer program where these manufacturers will be able to get their drugs from their manufacturing plant directly to our front doorsteps, theoretically saving money by cutting out the middlemen. Unfortunately, these programs are really for people that don't have insurance coverage or looking for coverage for drugs not covered through their insurance plan. The reason being is, if you have an insurance plan like many of us do, you've got $10, $30, $50 copays for a lot of your drugs. that is likely going to be a much lower cost for that prescription drug than the direct to consumer price. So while we feel good about these announcements, feels good for the PR firms, ultimately, does that really drive down the cost of prescription drugs for us in America? Probably not a whole lot in the short term. Lastly, the IRS has updated their contribution limits for 2026 401k limits, going from 23.5 to 24.5. IRA limit increasing from 7,000 to 7,500, and catch-up contributions for those of you over 50 years old are going up to 1,100. That's up $100 from 1,000 last year. Thanks so much for stopping by. Look forward to seeing you next week.